Every organization that I've worked in, there is a moment where people look at each other and say that there is something going wrong. We are not together as we used to be. And in that moment, we realize that the meetings are getting longer. There is a lot of misunderstanding. There is distraction in that environment. And then someone comes up and say, we have to work on the system. We need to change the system. They start blaming the tools, blaming Clicker, blaming Jira, blaming Monday.com. Those tools that you know that facilitate your projects, your deadlines, and all the milestones that you have to accomplish. People start blaming them. But here is the reality. Sometimes, or most often, it's not about the tools, it's about the people. And in every organization that these things start existing, this misunderstanding, this misalignment, there is always a common misunderstanding, there is always a common mistake that people make, and that is miscommunication, right? Because why? Communication is a key. It is the key in your project. Tools don't build trust. Tools don't keep heartbroken people who are going through a lot in your project. Tools don't do that. It is the people that are involved in your project. Now, let's be honest for a second. Communication is uncomfortable. You have to be vulnerable enough to sit down and ask the next person, hey, are we still on the same page? Are we working in the same direction? Many people think that just sending updates means that there is alignment. Having meetings means that you are connected with people, or visibility means there is a shared understanding. That is not the truth. In every organization that I've seen where people go successfully, they grow their company, they grow their self-growth development, they share everything openly. They share the wins, they open up themselves, right? Communication is quite uncomfortable. But what happens if you are vulnerable enough to share with your team members? That is where the real magic happens. That is where success begins. That is where growth begins. Because at that point, everyone feels comfortable. Everyone feels like they are understood. They are valuable in every organization. So you have to create a space, an open space, where everyone can earn themselves. They can give themselves. They can share what is necessary, what is value. That is how communication works. Let's get into this and be very practical about it. Now, before you embark on a project, before you start a project, there are some important questions that you really need to ask yourself. You need to ask your team. The first thing that you have to do is make sure that there is radical clarity in your team. There is that space of clarity. And when you have created that space, you ask these two questions. The first one is, why are we trying to achieve this? What is the purpose of this project? That is the first question you ask. The second question is, why does it matter? Why do we care? Why do we really have to do this? Right? What are we trying to achieve? Why are we trying to achieve it? The third question is, who is accountable for it? Who is accountable for this? Who is accountable for that? Who is accountable for what? You need to be clear about this thing. Now, the simplest way that you can do this, which is something that I tried out with my team, unfortunately, I was surprised that so many people were not aligned with their goals. So what I did is I asked my team members to write down the goal of this project, what we are trying to achieve. So out of 8 people, only 2 people were able to really give a real definition of what we are trying to achieve. In that space, in that scenario, who is to be blamed? As a project manager, you have to make sure that there is alignment. Communication is not noise. You have to build that psychological environment where people feel comfortable in expressing themselves. That was not a downfall for my team. It is just me trying to make sure that we are aligned. Because in a team where people don't understand the why, the how, and the what, that is already a risk. The next step that you have to do is make sure that you explain the why, not just the what. Every tool can display what we are trying to do, what we are trying to accomplish, but it takes a leader to explain why we are trying to achieve this. Now, when people understand the why, that is where they take ownership. right? You have to understand that there is a need for people to see the purpose of what we are trying to achieve. There's a simple framework that I use. In each sprint, I take 5 minutes to re-emphasize, to explain more why you should embark on this project, why we are trying to do this. Now you have to understand that people don't get burnout, they don't get confusion because of how they are working really hard. It's simply when they don't find meaning in what they are trying to accomplish. So take your time. 5 minutes, it might sound very simple, but 5 minutes before the start of every sprint is going to change the way your project works. Explain the why, explain the purpose of that project. It works like magic. Next thing that you have to do is simplify the channel. How you communicate with people matters a lot. Sometimes communication get broken because of how vast it is just everywhere. There is no particular area where we have to communicate. Now you have to break those channels. You can use WhatsApp, you can use emails. Set one for communication, set one for discussion, one for updates, one for tasks. Structure it very well so that you can build focus, you can build an environment where people are going to be relatable with what they're doing. That's how you build a communication channel. You should have a channel that prioritizes everything that you do. The next thing that you have to make sure that you prioritize also is build a feedback loop. Feedback is very important in communication. In an environment where people feel like, oh, they can open up, that is where progress starts. If someone feels like, if I disagree with this, I'm free to say it, I'm free to express it, I'm free to open up, that is where growth begins. So you need to build that environment where people give feedback. Feedback is very valuable in your project. It is very valuable. No matter where it comes from your stakeholders, it is very important. The next thing that you have to do is lead by example. As a project manager, silence is deadly more than when you speak. Silence is very deadly. When you're silent in your project, you are going to kill the morals of the people that work in that project. People don't feel valued, they are scared, they don't open up, they don't know what is next, they don't know what they are supposed to do or what they are not supposed to do. Silence is very dead. As a project manager, you're leading by example. You're showing to people that this is what you should be able to do. You should be vulnerable enough to communicate with me. You should be vulnerable to do this. If you're asking people to take this part, you should be able to take that part. That is what we mean by leading by example as a leader. So take a moment to ask yourself this question: why is my project failing? Or why did my project fail? Was it the tool or how I'm using it? Because the reality is, the new app that you're going to discover, the new tool that you will discover, is not going to fix your project. What fixes your project is the environment that you create, where people feel safe, where they can speak up, the culture that you develop, and create an environment where there's clarity. That is what fixes project. That is leadership. That is communication. That is project management to the highest degree. Because the reality is, tools don't fix project. People do fix your project. So the next time you open up a new tool, make sure that you open up a conversation with people. The next time you are updating a task on the dashboard, make sure that there is a shared understanding with people. The next time you are trying to assign tasks to people, make sure that there is alignment with all those people. Because that then is leadership. Leadership to the highest degree. Leadership that prioritizes the safety of the people who are working in that environment. If this episode shifted your mindset on how you work with people, on how you prioritize things in your projects, on how you're going to start thinking differently, don't just keep this to yourself. Share it with someone so that another person can benefit from this. And this means a lot to us. There is another favor that I need from you. If you are not a regular subscriber, if you're already subscribed to this channel, I want you to double check if you're a subscriber already. Please do us a favor, hit that subscribe button. That will mean tremendously help us in how we work, everything that we do here, how we manage this page. It shows that you really value what you're doing. Thank you for doing that. See you next time.